Hello, and welcome back to the Women's Rugby Show weekly podcast brought to you by Moonrise Sports with me, Sam. By the way, we are back again for episode 19 of the podcast, where this week we're having a look once again at the Six Nations ahead of round four this weekend. We're talking to a little bit from the England camp with Sarah Hunter and Tatyana Hurd. We have another part of Moonrise Sports, the Moonrise 5 segment, and then we'll also focusing on the England pathways. We're speaking to someone from England under the 20s and also England under 18s head coach James Cooper. And as always, we'll round off with the news. Before we get into this episode, make sure you check out our partners, Moonrise Sports, across all social medias. And also don't forget to check us out on YouTube if you listen to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you check us out on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to listen to us on the go. If you don't know that, well, let's get into this episode. As I just mentioned, we'll be focusing a little bit on the Six Nations. The last round, also looking ahead to round five. Obviously, in the last round, a massive win for England over in Scotland, miserable conditions, 46-0 win. And also a win for France, 38-15 over Italy in Paris, which was Joy Neville's last ever game referee. So huge congratulations to her on a great career. But the talking point of the weekend was obviously Ireland's win over Wales, 36-5, huge result for Ireland. Massively impressive performance. You can see how much they've come on in the last 12 months. But I guess kind of what's gone wrong for Wales, the team who finished third in last year's Six Nations, looked to be pulling up trees, being really impressive. But currently 0 from 3 so far with losses to um, Scotland, England, and Ireland, the three home nations. And then you've got two tough games to come. You've got obviously with France and Italy coming up the last two weekends. Italy, the Principality as well. They're not. You don't want to be heading out of the Six Nations with 0 from 5, but it's going to be tough for the match. But I think kind of just before we get into talking to the England camp, just wanted to touch on a little bit of what's gone wrong in Wales. I think, do you look at the coaching? Do you look at the top of the coaching? Is it they need an attack coach, or they need a defence coach, they need something different in there? Perhaps they need someone from one of the PWR clubs to come in and do a bit of coaching. And this isn't a slight on Ewan Cunningham or any of the coaching staff. It's just curiosity of what has changed in the last 12 months. Is it the wanting energy not there? Is what Hannah Jones said in her post-match interview against Ireland. Obviously, she's come out since and said that's not what she meant, but that is worrying. And then, or perhaps the lack of domestic game and that. But the pathways there, you have your 18s doing well, you have your under 20s coming back in, you have these players playing in books. You see, like a couple of players who've made a debut recently, Molly Reid and Glenn Hopkins have come through books. You have the Celtic Challenge, people like Alex Calladine, Natalia John, again, Molly Reid and Sean Jones, Glenn Hopkins have all been playing in the Celtic Challenge and been doing well. So these players are getting game time. You look at the players play all through the PWR are getting game time, but is it because they're not playing in Wales? Who knows? Just it's been a tough couple of weeks for the Welsh side. I think this stems from all the way up because you see it with the men's side, they're struggling. You see it with their regions, they're struggling. You see it in their domestic game on the men's side, they're struggling. So if they're all struggling, I think the women's side are going to struggle just because that's what's happening over in Wales at the moment. But just not to end on a negative with our kind of talking at the start, one massive positive from that game was Gwen Hopkins' debut in her first try. I think we've talked about before just how impressed we have been with Gwen and performances for Hartpury and for Gwalia, and also just a couple of minutes she's made for Gloucester Hartpury this season as well. I think we tweeted it last week that she's destined to hit 70 plus caps for Wales, and I think that was seen on Saturday, and was really impressed with that performance, and can't wait to see kind of more of her in a Welsh shirt heading forward. Enough of me talking now, and we'll head into some words from the England camp with centre Tatyana Hurd and coach and legend of the game, Sarah Hunter.
I think we've just gone back to having some really good principles to work off and processes. And for me, that's kind of the foundation of how you build a good foundation. If we keep that like really clear, that actually if we get broken, we know what we've got to go back to and what we've got to fix. And then on top of that, like I guess that what underpins it is probably the mindset of how we want to defend, and I guess what sort of team we want to be defending. And I guess that's the sort of emotional connection to defense. And whilst we've like defended really well and we've conceded 10 points, there's still things for us to go after and to fix up. And yeah, like the next two games will be good challenges for us, just to see where we're taking our defence to that next level.
For me, I think just for you, Tatyana, obviously your second cap for England was at Twickenham back in 2018. Just how do you feel kind of the game's changed since then, almost 6 years ago now?
Well, on a personal level, I feel like I've learned so much since then. I think I was very naive back at that point and thinking that like everything was perfect and had to be perfect. And I think now I've got to the point on my personal level that things are going to improve, things are going to get better, and the standard of the game has just gone skyrocketed. So I think it's really, really cool to see, really cool to be a part of. But I think there's obviously so much more to come from the game. I think if you think about the fans that are coming in now, 45,000 people, 45,000 tickets sold. Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe and take yourself back to those moments. It just feels like a whole different ball game. But yeah, it's really exciting and can't wait to hopefully be part of it.
Part two of the podcast, as always, sees us talk to one of our partners, Moonrise Sport Athletes, for the segment Moonrise 5, where we ask them 5 random questions. In this week, we'll be talking to USA and Exeter Chiefs International, Gabby Cantorna.
Yeah, I decided to join the Moonrise platform because when I was younger, the only real rugby resources I had around would have been those in the area. And obviously, growing up in the US, those are quite minimal. So I think having the option or the ability to talk to professionals in the game or, people that have played or been through your shoes would have been something that I would have liked to have access to. So I thought, given the opportunity, that I would put myself on there in case anyone did, was looking for any tips or even wanted to just connect with someone that has played. So just to provide a resource really for those that might not have those around them.
And like I just mentioned to you, this kind of segment is about asking you kind of 5 random questions, a bit about rugby, kind of get to know you a bit better off the pitch. So the first question is just, what's your favourite kind of piece of like memento or memorabilia or something you've collected from your rugby career? Maybe a shirt, a cap, or something like that.
Oh, that's a good question. Favorite memento. Probably I have a shirt from Sachiko, who played at Chiefs. So we traded when we played against each other at the World Cup. So obviously she's a front row prop. So I've got one #1 shirt from her with the Japan shirt, which I quite like and I find fun to have.
And the next question is, what player in the women's rugby world would you least like to be left one-on-one with defensively?
Least like to be, what? Probably Claudia McDonald, because it's happened and it's not gone well. And she's quick and can sidestep. And those are like my 2 nightmares, really. I don't mind when they're big. Then I can handle that.
And the question number 3 is, what's a favourite city you visited for rugby?
Favorite city, probably Cape Town. Beautiful. And we were there when the Men's World Cup was on, which was super cool. So
Yeah, was that for WXV2 last year?
yeah, for WXV2, yeah.
Yeah, I think the Americans seem to get quite a lot of nice cities in compared to some of the other countries, don't they?
Yeah, we get to see some nice places. It helps that no one is really, other than Canada, is around the US, so you kind of have to travel to go somewhere.
And the next question is, what teammate would you least like to be stuck in a lift with?
Ooh, probably Kate Zachary. I'll go US teammate, just because if I was stuck in a lift, I'd probably just want to like rest. And I think she would like try to problem solve or talk. And I think that that's not what I would want in that space. So probably her.
Is there anybody? Is there anybody you'd want to be stuck in a room with? And it's stuck in the lift with, sorry.
Maybe like Katana Howard. She's pretty laid back. I think we'd have a nice time. She might panic, actually, now that I think about it, but it would start off okay.
And the final question is, what's the strangest pre-match routine you've encountered in rugby? If you have any.
Yeah, it's a good question too. Somebody has one that I can't even, she says she does it every time and I still don't know what it is. So that one's the most mysterious. That one goes out to Tricky. Strangest, maybe. I don't know if I've come across a lot of people who have strange ones. Maybe I think people, I just find this strange because it's not how I work, but people who write a lot of things down in a notebook beforehand, because I find that makes me feel more overwhelmed. And like, I'm like, that's too much for me before a game. So I find that a little bit strange, but can't say that I've come across any bad ones that are really odd that I've noticed, at least.
Do you have anything pre-match, or are you kind of laid back?
I try to be really laid back. That's probably the extent I go to. Like, I want to rest as long as I can rest, because otherwise I'll get anxious. So I try to be really, really laid back. And then like probably 20 or 30 minutes before warm up, I try to engage with the people around me to like bring myself back up. But like, I'm almost not even existing before that. I try to be really, really low.
Perfect. So, Gabby, thank you so much for chatting to us today. Before we let you go, is there any kind of question you think we should add to our list of random questions to ask future participants of this segment?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that you should ask the next person what their favorite type of boot is and why. So like
Nice.
what brand they wear, because I think that people are really particular and have a lot of interesting opinions on those things. I've come across a lot of interesting opinions about that.
Perfect. So, Gabby, thank you so much for chatting to us today, and best of luck for the rest of the season with Exeter and the USA Come Pack 4.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
In part three this week's taking a little bit of an England Pathways theme is the England under-20s are heading to France this weekend to take on their under-20 side. Huge game for the England under-20s after the game against the Army a few weeks ago. It'll also be the England under-18s are quite fresh off that Six Nations Festival up in Colwyn Bay. Obviously, we went to the first day of that with really impressive performances from across the nation, but especially some of the English performances. So in this section, we'll be talking to England under-20s hooker Lucy Calladine, kind of on her journey to this England under-20s shirt, and also England under-18s head coach James Cooper about just how important this pathway is heading forward for the Red Roses. Just first of all, thank you so much for chatting to us today. Obviously, it's a few days post your Loughborough Lightning debut up at Sale at the weekend. Just how did you find that, obviously getting over the try line as well?
Yeah, it was great. It was nice to get a run out with all the girls, especially from like how hard we've all been training. But yeah, to come out with a win was good, and even with a try, which was nice.
And obviously, you started the season out at Worcester Warriors. Just how tough was that kind of ending of Warriors? Obviously, so many girls are in the same situation, but just how tough was that for you?
Yeah. So yeah, it was definitely like a hard thing to go through, especially being like a young age. I kind of started my uni there, so I had to kind of uproot my life again. But yeah, well, so it's hard to like move on from it. But thank being like Loughborough, it's been a very nurturing environment, so they've helped me keep on developing and stuff. But well, I do miss Warriors a lot, but we kind of have to move on with it. But yeah, it was a nice double-headed game with Sale, so I got to see some of the CUV girls again and my old coach, so that was nice to see them all, especially just like my new Lightning beginning as well.
And obviously, a few players made the jump over with you, Catherine Wells, Evelyn Clark. Just has that kind of helped you settle in a little bit more to where it would just be yourself on your own?
It massively helps. I feel like having that like comfort blanket in a way with them too definitely helps you bring out your side. But there's also some other girls that were there straight away to help me come in. But yeah, it's definitely nice to have a friendly face, if you know what I mean, there.
And obviously, you're training with some legends at Lightning quite regularly. Obviously, Emily Scarrett, Helen Nelson, Rachel Malcolm. Just how much have you learned from those players? Obviously, they're not a new position you play, but just legends of the games. How much have you learned from them?
Yeah, massively. It's not even just like on the pitch, it's like off the pitch and how they conduct themselves. It's massively like beneficial to me. They do like you can see how professional they are in like every scenario. So yeah, it's like their work rate as well is unreal. So just even being in the same pitch as them is like amazing. You learn so much from them.
And I'm just moving on to England, obviously made your under-20s debut a few weeks ago at the Army. Just how did you find that kind of playing against senior women for the first time?
Yeah, it was amazing. It's an unreal experience. It's such a different environment that you're not expecting. All the fans came, which was amazing, and obviously it was against the Army, so it was quite a physical game. But yeah, I'm glad that we came up on top, and I think we learned so much from it.
I'm getting over the try line again. You're making a habit of scoring a try in a debut.
Thanks. Yeah, good forwards effort on the mauls.
And just how special kind of was it an occasion? Obviously, you've done it before with England under 18s, but doing it as a higher level, just how was that feeling singing the anthem for the first time in a 20s shirt?
Yeah, you do get goosebumps every time you sing it, and like you just feel a sense of pride when you sing and think about, oh, you do it for your family, you do it for your friends, but you're also doing it for your country, which is very crazy to think about.
And just how have you kind of felt making that jump up from 18s level? Obviously, there's a fair few people who've done it with you, but just how much of a difference have you found it this year?
Yeah, it's definitely a step up. You definitely have to be a bit more professional. Like under 18, you're still professional, but 20s, it's definitely an upper gear. But yeah, thankfully I had other people around with me, but the coaches make it an easy transition for you and people around you help as well.
I think there's at least 10 from that squad last year who are now in the 20 squad. Just how good it to kind of see that pathway is there and that pathway is viable.
Yeah, I think it just shows like how good the pathway is and how much it helped the development through all of it. 18s is definitely somewhere where it nurtures your growth, but 20s where like help you execute it. And I think that is showing throughout all the players. Like there is some unreal players that have come up from the 18th pathway and now in the 20s. And I think that shows in the England shirt, but also in Prem shirts.
Yeah, I was just about to mention the players stepping up kind of in that PWI level, obviously Millie, Ella, Amelia, both Amelias, and Annabelle as well. Just how special to kind of see these players making that step up and knowing that this could be you in a couple of weeks' time, a year's time, maybe 2 years' time.
Yeah, it's definitely an inspiration. Everyone's so proud of each other, also like tight as one unit. So everyone's backing everyone and everyone's like patting each other on the shirt, even if you're playing against them. So yeah, and it just shows how possible it is to be able to be on that shirt and that you can fight for that shirt number.
And obviously, moving on to France this weekend, just how tough a challenge is that going to be? You know how good they are at age group level, obviously, having played against them last year. Just how tough of a challenge is it going to be this weekend?
Yeah, like we know that they're going to be a very physical team, and we know that they are a very good team. But we're not gonna see them as like superhumans, and we're gonna think that they're gonna batter us. Like we know that we can put a really good contest in, and that we can come away with a win. So we just need to stick to our tactics and do what we can do best.
And just how special of an experience is kind of an away game to France with the squad. Obviously, France is such a special place to play rugby. You see when the Red Roses play over there, there's such kind of hostile crowd, something you might not be used to. Just how special an occasion is it going to be?
Yeah, we kind of got prepped today that the crowd is big and the crowd is definitely back in France. But yeah, we'll just use it to fire feeds fire. So yeah, I think we'll be able to deal with that. But yeah, it's definitely going to be another unreal experience and a core memory for a lot of the girls.
And just kind of in 20s as a whole, just how important is it kind of you as you develop? Obviously, you've played some rugby in the championship, you've stepped up from 18s, you've made your Allianz Cup debut. Just how important is 20s for you in your development heading forward?
Yeah, it's really good. It's good for like pressure as well. So like when I'm doing my throws and stuff, having that like just extra eyes on me really helps. But this environment really nurtures your professionalism, but also your skills, and they really like pinpoint on what you need to improve on so you can keep that shirt and to keep on fighting for a shirt next season as well.
And obviously, Wales in a few weeks' time at home. Just how excited are you for a potential kind of home game in front of a home crowd against Wales, kind of one of England's old enemies in rugby? Just how special could that be?
Yeah, it'll be amazing. Obviously, it's an honour to every time put on the shirt, and that's no difference against Wales. They will obviously be very proud to put on their shirt, so it'll be a very good contest. Wales are always quite physical as well, so it'll be good to have a home game against them and see what the crowd's like as well.
And obviously, the coaching staff at 20s with LJ and Sarah McKenna, just how much have you enjoyed working with them? Obviously, Sarah's still so much involved in the professional game herself.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Like you can really take hear what they're saying. They say it. They give you such like clear comms to see what you need to improve on, which is really helpful, especially for younger people who are trying to develop. They really need to pinpoint on what they can do better. So yeah, they really help nurture all of those girls, and they do it in a way that's just like it's criticism, but it's given nicely and stuff. So like we can take it on board.
And just last one for me, obviously, your first year with 20s, your first year kind of out of 18s rugby. Just what's the goal for kind of the rest of this year and then going forward from 2025 onwards?
Yeah, definitely have a couple more appearances in the England shirt would definitely be my main goal, but also enlightening, get some more games with them and hopefully keep on fighting for that number 2 shirt, hopefully. But yeah, next season, definitely having a good pre-season to kick off the season well and hopefully have a strong cup run.
Perfect. So, Lucy, thank you so much for chatting to us today and best of luck for France this weekend.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And just thank you so much for chatting to us today. Just obviously, you were a few weeks off off after Colin Bay down. Just kind of what are your overall reflections on the festival as a whole, first of all?
From an England point of view, or the Six Nations?
Go from a Six Nations point of view, then an England point of view, if that's all right.
Yeah, okay. From a Six Nations point of view, it was good. Again, it's a step forward. You could see the other countries have definitely improved overall, which is good. It makes the games competitive. Like Italy have clearly worked hard. Ireland and Wales, the infrastructure they're starting to put into their pathway. I know it's only recent, but you can see the impact that that's having already. So that was useful. Playing it on 4G up at RGC's ground always makes it exciting. Faster games, more action. The weather was certainly a challenge, especially on that last day when what was the name of the storm? Katrina, Kathleen, one of the two. That made it for an interesting day. But no, overall, real good facilities up there at RGC with the 4G. Having the indoor barn space was great. A different type of tournament in that when we were in Edinburgh and last year at Wellington, everyone was on the same site. So there was a lot more interactions between. This time, just due to the nature of where we were staying in the hotels, everyone was spread out a little bit more. So we only really saw people either crossover on training days or as match days themselves.
And just what about from an England perspective, just how did you find kind of the performances of the girls?
Overall, good. Like there was some real good learning for the players. Real good to see their mentality in the group. So we had to come from behind in 3 games, which is obviously not ideal in terms of where we wanted to be, but for their learning in terms of one being on it from the start, like a 35-minute game is a challenge. Some of them described it a little bit like sevens. You've just got to get right into it. So that's a challenge for them. But for them to work out what was going well, what wasn't going so well, and how to pull that back, that was really pleasing, actually. So from a development point of view, that was really important to see how they worked that out against Italy. We left it very late to draw, but for our kicker, about the 15-meter line on the right-hand side, a trickier kick for her with all the pressure coming on her. Her learning from that moment will stand her in real good stead, moving forwards into the adult game as she leaves us now because she ages out. So there's some real good moments in there, some real good positives to take from it. Clearly things that we have to improve and clearly things that we need to work on and get right. But I think, happy. Is happy the right word? I think there's some positives overall.
Can you just kind of sum up how this season has worked from a coaching's perspective for you from kind of all the way back? I know you start kind of August time, isn't it, into kind of getting them ready to face France in that last game of the festival?
Yeah, so what we do early on in the year, August, we do regional days. So we do that in 3 locations. We go north, southeast, southwest. We do that in August and end of September, start of October this year is what we did. What that allows us to do is look at more players. So across those dates, we've looked at over 100 players. So it allows us to go pretty wide. So bringing players out of the centre of excellence, out of the colleges, those that have just moved up from under 16s, that we go, look, there is potential in you. Let's have a look at you here. From that, we then brought 50 together in October for a centralised 3 days. Then we did our internal game. Across all of this, players are coming in and out as well. Because the key word that we keep telling players is yet. It may not be yet for you. You've got potential. It's just where you sit currently compared to others nationally. Then we do our internal game. December, we did our first selected camp with the 36. Slight caveat to that was we had players away in Thailand. Hartby went to Thailand for the sevens tournament over there, which for them was brilliant experience. Like, go and do that. How many players can say they've played in Thailand? So what that then allowed us, we invited in some under 17s to train with us who we'd seen through the Centre of Excellence, one of which actually ended up getting selected for the Six Nations. So she did December, didn't come back in January, did February camp, and then played Ireland and Six Nations. And then January, February camps, played March, Ireland away, took 23 players over there. Real good exposure. I think off the top of my head, and I could be wrong with this, I think there were 19 new caps that we took to Ireland. So loads of players there. March camp and then into Six Nations in April time. And throughout that, we had players that came in and out. And it's a message that I talk to the players about all the time from August, every camp, of that not yet and different rates of development. So one of the players, Jess Doyle, for example, from the Northeast, she did everything with us until the internal game. We didn't keep her on at that point. We went, look, Jess, not quite ready yet. Go away and work on X, Y, Z. Feedback was really good from the Centres of Excellence. So she came back into the February camp, played Ireland, came to Six Nations. Jojo, the winger, hadn't been in with us. She came into December because there was spaces with Hartbury being away. Went well there. We then brought her back into the February camp because we had an injury in the back three. She went well. She did Ireland, did Six Nations. So I'm hoping players can see that we are watching them all the time. We do keep tabs on them. It may be a not yet at that point in time, but rates of development, they may come through later.
How difficult is it to kind of keep track on so many players? Obviously, you've got all the Centre of Excellences, you've got all the schools and colleges. Just how tough is it to kind of keep track on everyone?
This is where building those relationships with the colleges and the centres is really important. So I generally speak to the Centre of Excellences as was. It's going to change obviously for the new season, but I would speak to them minimal once every 2 weeks just to see what's going on, see what's happening. I would try and get to their training when I could. If I couldn't get to the training, I'd watch it online for those that filmed it, or I'd go to their matches. Same with the colleges, speak to the college coaches regularly. I get out to the college matches on the Wednesdays where I can. I try and make sure I bounce around to the different ones to see them differently. So that's kind of how we keep tabs on it. The college and Centre of Excellence coaches are also on our Huddle, our online platform, so they can see what has been done in camp. They have an idea of where players are performance-wise. After every camp I'd send a quick WhatsApp to centres and college coaches and go, look, player X, this and this, player Y, this and this was good, this is a couple of work on areas. And our camps are open, like anyone can come and watch them as well. So we'd often get Centre of Excellence coaches, college coaches coming in just to see. So they got a real good idea of the standard of player that we've got, and they could then go, actually, player X might be worth a look at because of this, or player Y might be worth a look at. And then I could look at their match footage or their training footage and go, yeah, I agree. So actually, if there's space and you come, or actually not quite yet because of
And you just touched on the kind of change from CV to PDG centres is how the official word is going to be, isn't it? Just what's the kind of thinking behind the change? And can you kind of explain a little bit of how it'll work in kind of practice?
Yeah, so it's player development groups, PDG. They're replacing Centres of Excellence, and we're going from 12 Centres of Excellence to 9 PDGs. A few reasons behind that. One is to bring it in-house. So the RFU oversee all 9 of them, and we'll put out a national curriculum of this is what we want to see, this is what we expect players to be able to do, both from an on-pitch technical, tactical point of view, a game understanding point of view, the athletic framework for S&C, the off-pitch stuff, so education resources, female health, nutrition, all that type of thing. So we're bringing it in-house, and then what that will help is standardise it across the country. So the kid up in the Northeast, in Newcastle, they will get the same provision as the kid down, potentially down in Cornwall or Canterbury or Cumbria. So it's just to centralise everything to ensure we have provision. And then from going from 12 to 9, we can resource it better. And by resource, I mean finance. Yeah. There's an uplift in some of the finance going into it. And then by going to 9 rather than 12, those places get more finance. So then we can look to pay for staff as well, which should then hopefully drive and improve again that standard. What's also going to happen is those 9 centre leads will help oversee the under-16s PDG foundation below that. So that's delivered by the 28 counties. And for, let's say, ease of numbers, let's say each under-18s has 3 16s PDG foundations. So they will link him to those 3 lead coaches at the foundation. They'll help us skill them. They'll have good comms with them to know who's coming out of that into that under-18 space. So it's trying to create that pathway from under-16s right through to the end of under-18s from the PDG point of view. There will be different entry points along that as well, because someone might take up rugby later on, or they might develop a little bit later in under 17, under 18. So there will still be opportunities to enter. And then that mirrors what we're doing at the national level of showing the girls that it's a 4-year pathway with us from England under 18s to the end of England under 20s.
Okay. And just kind of, you touched on it a little bit about the colleges, just how important are they in that kind of college rugby system to the development of players playing with their mates as well?
Yeah, really important. And again, that's something we're bringing in-house this year. So AOC have been running that previously. They've done a really good job. We're bringing it in-house again with I forget what department it is at the RFU overseeing it. Forgive me, I think it's the competitions department is probably the most likely. And they'll oversee that. But what it does is it gives the players the opportunity to regularly play 15-a-side rugby at a high level. And that's, the more you do things at a high level in general, the better you get at it. So it's really important. They play sort of every second week, so it gives them a chance to train and play. They then get a chance to recover, review, train again before they're playing a little bit further down the line.
You mentioned that kind of playing to a high standard. Obviously, the Bucks final last night, Daisy Aspinall playing for Hartpury. Just kind of how impressive is that to kind of be playing up at such a high level?
There was another kid involved as well last night, Freya McGinley.
Yes,
she was under 17. She's under 18. Forgive me. So I'm gonna check now because I've got it on my photos.
And the 2 Welsh players as well, Alor and
yeah, I think there's a few in the end, Alwyn, and yeah. So it's really good because it just stretches the players beyond what they can normally do. Daisy's been in the England 18s for 3 seasons now. She's the last one that came in as an under 16. I think she will, and I said this to all the players, she's probably going to be the last one, our most highest capped player ever, unless we suddenly throw loads of caps. I think she's got 13 under 18 caps. So for her, it's a great challenge because she gets tested against people that are just as fast or more physical or have a good game understanding. So she has to develop her game differently. So yeah, where appropriate and what's right for that player, having that opportunity to play up can be really valuable. But it has to be right for the player from a rugby point of view, a physical, mental point of view, and an emotional point of view. If they're not physically ready or emotionally ready, then we don't sign it off. But if it is the right thing to do, it can be really useful.
So does that come, say if Hartpury wanted to play her in a Bucks game, would that come through you before the final decision was made?
Yeah, so they have to send in a request for that. They have to send in a playing plan and a training plan to show how they're going to introduce the player to playing at that level and training at that level, because you can't just go from nothing straight to a full game. So it's how do you introduce them to contact, and how's that gradually introduced? Physically, where do they sit? And we use the under-20s data for this. So here's the under-20s sort of acceptable, desirable levels across a few markers. Where's that under-18 player sitting in comparison to that? Now, if they're well off, then we go no, because it's not safe. If they're close or thereabouts or meeting, then we go, okay, so physically we know they can cope with this load. Now it's how do we introduce them from a rugby point of view, and also are they ready psychologically for that step as well, because that can be a bit of a jump as well.
And just you mentioned that the under-20s there, I think there's 10 of last year's under-18s in this year's under-20 squad. Does that kind of just make you proud to know that pathway is working, that these players can make that step up?
Yeah, I'm super proud of that, and the hard work the 18 staff put in, and the colleges and the centre of excellence. Like that is key to what we do. The ultimate aim for us as a pathway is to produce senior EPS players, Red Roses girls. That is number one job. And then the stepping stones along that are, okay, how many can we translate up into that under-20s? How many can we get into regularly playing at Premiership level to then be a Red Rose? And it's different rate, like I said at the start, it's different rates of development. So some of the players in the 20s now, they may have done regional training with us last year, or they may not have even been in with us last year, but they've come through. And that's where earlier on I talked about the pathway being a 4-year system of, we have to look at these girls over the longer term. But to answer your question, I'm mega proud of it. It shows, I hope, what we're doing is right, and we're putting those building blocks in place to enable them to step up and perform at that level.
And you mentioned the kind of getting them ready to play PWR. I think there's 4 or 5 of them who have been doing that regularly this year. Do you think, is there anything you could have seen them making that impact so quick, like this from Millie Hyatt playing in a defending champions winning Gloucester Hartpury side as well?
You can see the potential in these players. What I think is going to happen more and more is you probably see that less and less, just because as the PWR becomes more established and they train more professionally, the gap between an 18-year-old coming out of age grade and trying to get into that system is going to get harder, because the amount of technical tactical work that the PWRs do, the S&C work that the PWRs do, that gap's getting bigger. I think the average debut age is about 22, 23 now in the PWR. There'll be those players that do come through and go, yeah, you're a pretty special potential, so you're going to get that exposure. Some of it is also a little bit of luck. Like, are they at a club where either a player's just left or they've got a couple of injuries in those positions, so they get put in? But don't get me wrong, Amelia McDougall, sorry, Annabelle Meta,
Ella Quinns as well.
Off the top of my head. Yeah,
Ella
Ella
Quinns,
Cromax, sorry. Yeah. Their first years out, there's a few more knocking around that have done it. But so yeah, they're 4 very potentially gifted players who have worked hard to get to where they are. And they've got that opportunity. They've taken the opportunity as well. That's part of it, like taking that opportunity when it comes along. And then there's others that it takes a little bit longer. If you look at Tori Sellers, Neve Swales, for example, they're in their second year of under-20s and they're now starting to break into that world.
And just finally, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what is your kind of driving force as the under-18s head coach?
Oh, big question, Sam. I want to create an oversupply of players to the next level. That's number one job, is that.
Yeah.
Can I make it really tricky is probably the wrong term, but can I produce or help to produce an oversupply of players. So when LJ's doing her under-20 stuff, she's got a lot of people to choose from. So it makes her life harder in one sense, but getting a better standard of player in another. And then the same for the PWR and EPS players. That's the number one driver for the 18s program. And we need to be looking at how can we make sure we produce players to win the 29, 33, 37, 41 World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we've got to be aiming for. So that's the key driver, to be honest. And of course, when we play the matches at Six Nations and an Ireland example, of course, I want to go well there, and I want us to do really well and perform well because we're competitive by nature. But it's also having that awareness of what's the bigger purpose here. Okay, the bigger purpose is this. And then probably the third caveat to that would be, we know not everyone will get to those levels. So can we give them a really good positive experience so they stay in the game in some form? So be that they're a Prem regular or they're a Championship regular. When they move beyond that, do they stay in the game as a coach, a manager, an analyst, whatever? Because if we can do that, we can then just keep the messages keep cycling, it keeps growing, the base of it. So it's probably three-tiered. Win in England and multiple win in England. Being really competitive and going well in our games, because who doesn't? Everyone wants that. And then thirdly, keeping that base growing, because then that makes everything stronger beyond that.
And finally, as always, we end with the news on the Women's Rugby Show Weekly. And this week, just wanted to start off with a huge congratulations to Hartpury University on winning their third consecutive BUCS Women's National League title last night, if you listen to this on Thursday, or Wednesday night, if you listen to this in the future. Just a really, really impressive performance from them. They were great against Loughborough. Loughborough brilliant too. Some great game of women's rugby, a great advert for BUCS women's rugby as well heading forward. And also congratulations to Blues women on their Super Rugby Opiki title with a 24-18 win over Chiefs Manawa last weekend. This weekend's kind of a bit semi-final heavy in the women's rugby world, with over in Super W in Australia, we've reached a semi-final stage with Fadrine Drua hosting the Western Force and also the Waratahs hosting the Brumbies. And finally, on Sunday here in the UK, it's a championship semi-finals taking place with Thurrock hosting Sale 1861 and also OA Saints travelling up to Cheltenham Tigers, where actually we'll be hosting a Q&A at their lunch beforehand. We're really excited for this weekend. Twickenham Saturday, Cheltenham Tigers Sunday. Should be a great weekend. Thank you all for listening to the Women's Rugby Show Weekly this week. Really enjoyed all the chats we've had this week. A couple of really interesting conversations, really important conversations as well, especially those pathway conversations. Hope you've enjoyed the episode, and we'll sure to see you next week.